I had barely stepped out of the taxi when I saw them, my father and my older brother, standing on my porch like they'd been waiting all day for this moment, smirking, relaxed, comfortable. Like nothing in the world was about to collapse beneath. My feet, my sea bag was still on my shoulder, my boots were still dusty from Okinawa. I hadn't even taken 3 steps toward the house when my father said it. "You're homeless now, no hello. No welcome home." Just a sentence that hit harder than any blast wave I'd ever felt downrange. I froze. "What are you talking about?" I asked. My brother snorted into his beer and said, "We sold your house, sis." Try to keep up. They laughed, actually laughed, at their daughter, their sister, standing there fresh off an overseas rotation. Finding out everything she'd built was gone, my father gestured lazily at the front door, like this was some minor inconvenience. "Your brother needed help. Family sacrifices for family. You weren't here, you didn't need the place." Then he said the part that told me exactly how little I mattered to them. "You Marines bounce around anyway. What difference does a house make?" I should have exploded. I should have screamed, cursed, broken apart right there on the porch. Instead, I smiled, slow, steady, the kind of smile that made both of them stop laughing. My father frowned. "What's so funny?" I said. "The house you sold was actually..." But before I finished that sentence, "You need to know how this really started, because none of this was an accident. They didn't stumble into betrayal. They planned it. They just didn't plan it well." 3 months earlier, I was stationed in Okinawa, halfway through a 6-month rotation. Sure, duty isn't glamorous, but it's predictable, and predictable is something Marines don't get very often. I used my off hours to call home, to check on the house, to make sure nothing was falling apart. I'd owned that place for 8 years, bought it myself after my 2nd deployment, renovated it room by room with my own money. It wasn't just a house, it was my anchor, my proof that all the moving, all the deployments, all the sacrifice led to something solid. But every call home felt wrong. My father always sounded irritated, like I was interrupting something important. My brother Chad, the eternal finding himself project, had moved back in after losing yet another job. Every time I asked what he was doing to get back on his feet, Dad defended him. "He just needs time. He's working on it." "Don't be so judgmental, Maria," I'd hear. Dishes clatter, voices I didn't recognize. Once, someone shouted in the background, "Did she send the money yet?" The line went dead 2 seconds later. I told myself not to overthink it, told myself to give them grace. I'd been gone most of my adult life. Maybe I didn't understand what was happening back home. Maybe I didn't want to. 2 weeks before my homecoming, I got a text from my father. "Call us before you come home." No punctuation, no explanation. That cold twist hit my gut, the kind every Marine knows. Something's wrong, something's coming. Duty hours were brutal that week. When I finally called, it went to voicemail. Twice, I told myself it wasn't important. My flight was booked, my leave approved, I'd be home soon enough. And then I was standing in my driveway, staring at the people who raised me, realizing they'd sold the roof over my head to clean up my brother's mess. I didn't know about the gambling debt yet, not then, but I could already see it in their faces. The guilt, the justification. That particular look people get when they've done something unforgivable and convinced themselves it was necessary. My brother lifted his beer like he was celebrating. "Don't look so shocked. You were gone. Dad had power of attorney. Easy process, you'll get over it." My jaw tightened. The smile stayed. "Is that what he told you?" I asked quietly. My father's brow creased. "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Because what they didn't know, what was about to hit them like a truck, was that the house they sold wasn't what they thought it was, legally, financially, structurally. They had no idea what they'd actually put on the market, but I wasn't ready to say it, not immediately. Some things deserved to simmer. I set my sea bag down, brushed dust from my sleeve, and stepped onto the porch like nothing could touch me. My father moved aside, confused. My brother scoffed. Look at her, acting all calm. They thought I was calm because I was weak, because I was stunned. They didn't realize I was calm because I was already 10 steps ahead. Marines don't come home hoping for the best. We come home prepared for the worst. And this was nothing compared to what I'd survived before. I didn't go inside. I just stood there, silent, waiting. That silence stretched, heavy, uncomfortable. My father shifted. My brother tapped his beer can against the railing, nerves rattling louder than he realized. That silence was power. Finally, my father cleared his throat. Well, aren't you going to say something? I tilted my head and studied him, the man who used to wake up at 5 every morning to make me breakfast. The man who stood in the front row at my boot camp graduation with tears in his eyes. The man who hugged me before my first deployment so tight I could barely breathe. I wondered when he stopped being that man, when I stopped being his daughter and became his backup bank account. When did you sell it? I asked. 3 weeks ago, he said. It was the right thing to do. Your brother needed help. Needs, always Chad. And you didn't think to call me. He scoffed. You were overseas, busy. You Marines always are. That's interesting, I said, because I called every week. Chad rolled his eyes. Oh, here we go. I turned to him. Did you know? Did you sit there and watch him sign? And that's when the smile came back. Because the truth, the real truth, was seconds away from landing, and they had no idea what was coming next. Away my home, he shrugged, lazy and unbothered. Dad said it was fine. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He's Dad. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how breathtakingly unaware a grown man could be. Instead of arguing, I turned and walked down the steps, taking a slow lap across the yard, letting the cold Washington air cut through the noise in my head. The house looked the same from the outside. White siding, trimmed hedges, the flagpole eyed. Installed after re-enlisting. But it didn't feel the same. Something fundamental had been broken. Something deeper than a deed or a signature. Behind me, my father called out, "We put the money to good use. Your brother's debt is handled. He's safe now, debt." The word dropped into my stomach like a stone. Chad wasn't the kind of man who paid off debt. Chad collected it like a hobby, and Dad enabled him every single time. I turned back toward them, step by deliberate step, until I stood at the bottom of the porch stairs. "You want to tell me the whole truth?" I said evenly, "or do you want me to find it myself?" My father's jaw tightened. Chad drained the last of his beer and crushed the can in his hand. "What truth?" Chad said. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." "Really?" I asked, because when I left, the house was paid off. No liens, no debt, nothing pending. To sell it that fast, you needed cash buyers. "That means desperation." I paused. "Whose?" "Desperation." Chad's eyes flickered. Just for a second, but I saw it. "My brother's," I said softly. "So let's hear it." "Gambling, drugs, loan sharks. Which one this time?" My father exploded. "Stop interrogating your brother like he's a criminal." "I'm interrogating," I said calmly, "because my house is gone. You were gone," he snapped back. "Always gone. Always. Marine caused this. Marine caused that. You think you're better than everyone. You think you don't need this. Family, I've been serving this country for 13 years, I said, and every single assignment, I came home to this house. My house, the one thing I built, the one thing that was mine." He waved a dismissive hand. "You'll buy another one. You make good money, better than him." He pointed at Chad like Chad was a helpless child, not a 39-year-old man who'd been bailed out more times than I could count. That's when something inside me shifted, not broke, shifted. I saw them clearly then. Dad wasn't helping Chad because he was kind, he was helping him because he needed someone to need him. And Chad wasn't apologizing because he never had. Dad always absorbed the fallout, and now they'd taken something from me because they assumed I was strong enough to lose it. That's the burden of being the strong one. People think you don't feel the knife when they twist it. Then the front door opened. A woman stepped out. Blonde hair, sweatpants, a coffee mug that read, "Mama needs coffee." She wasn't my father's girlfriend. She wasn't a neighbor. She was someone else entirely. "Who are you?" I asked. She smiled politely. "I'm Emily, the new owner." My father winced. Chad shifted, and my world tilted. That meant the house wasn't just sold. It was closed, final, done, and still I smiled. "Congratulations," I said to her. "Did they tell you everything?" She blinked. "Everything." I looked back at my father and brother. Their faces had gone pale, just enough to tell me I wasn't the only one standing on unstable ground. I turned back to Emily. "Did they tell you the house you bought?" I paused. Let the silence stretch. Let my father fidget. Let Chad grip the railing like it might save him. "Isn't actually in their name." Emily frowned, confused. My father's voice cracked. "Maria, don't." But I wasn't even close to done. She tightened her grip on her mug. "What do you mean it's not in their name?" "The paperwork." "I'm sure the paperwork looked official," I said gently. Paperwork usually does, but it only tells one side of the story. I glanced at my father, letting the silence do its work. His face flushed red, shame mixed with anger. Chad muttered something under his breath, but the smirk was gone. They both knew I wasn't bluffing. "I don't understand," Emily whispered. "My father says a lot of things," I replied. "Let me ask you something. Who handled the sale?" She hesitated. "A man named Benson. He said he was helping the family with the transfer." I closed my eyes for half a second. Benson. Of course it was Benson. My father's old acquaintance. Always had a connection. Always had a deal. The kind of man who lived in grey areas and called it business. "Did you sign anything with an attorney present?" I asked. She shook her head. "He said it wasn't necessary. He said the family wanted it quick. Quick. That's how these things happen. Quick sales, quick lies, quick destruction." Behind me, my father stepped forward. "Maya, enough. You're upsetting her." I turned slowly. "Upsetting her," I said. "You sold her a house you had no legal right to sell. You stole from me, and you dragged her into it." My voice stayed calm. Years in the Marines taught me that volume is weakness. Silence and precision hit harder. "You weren't here." My father muttered. "We did the best we could." "The best you could," I echoed, "or the fastest way to clean up another one of Chad's messes." Chad stiffened. It wasn't a mess. It was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that cost thousands. I asked. "Or tens of thousands?" I tilted my head. "Let me guess. Sports betting, poker. Or did you finally graduate to something worse?" The yard went quiet, and that's when Emily realized something too. This wasn't a family dispute. This was a legal nightmare, and it was only just beginning. "Finally graduate to loan sharks." He looked away, jaw clenched. That was all the confirmation I needed. I turned back to Emily. "How long have you been here?" "A week," she said quietly. "We just moved in, and did you wonder why the sale happened so fast?" She hesitated. "Your father said you were overseas and wanted the money for something else. He said you'd agreed." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a scam, planned, executed, timed perfectly for when I was halfway across the world wearing a uniform that demanded integrity from me, while my own family exploited my absence. "Emily," I said gently, "I'm sorry you were pulled into this, but they didn't have the legal right to sell this house, not fully. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded document I'd carried with me since my deployment ended. She followed the page with her eyes as I held it out. This house was purchased using a VA home loan, I said. That comes with protections and rules, selling it without my consent, without me present, without proper authorization. I glanced at my father. That's not a family issue. That's a federal one. Her eyes widened. My father went pale. Chad's bravado collapsed. Completely, he looked small, exposed, like a kid caught stealing. Power of attorney, I continued, allows bill payments, maintenance, emergencies. It does not authorize the sale of federally backed property without specific filings, none of which were done. Emily pressed a hand to her chest. You saying the sale is invalid. I'm saying, I replied slowly, this isn't what you think it is, and you're going to need a lawyer. My father stepped closer, his voice shaking between anger and fear. Maria, don't do this. We're family. That didn't stop you. I said, family didn't matter when you needed fast cash. It was for your brother, he shouted. And what about me? I asked quietly. When did I stop being your child? When did I become expendable? For the first time, he had nothing to say. Emily finally spoke. What do I do now? You get a lawyer, I said. You tell them everything, and you stop speaking to my father outside official channels. She nodded, clutching her mug like it was the only solid thing left. My father pointed at me. You're ruining everything. No, I said calmly. You ruined everything the moment you treated my service like an opportunity instead of a sacrifice. I picked up my sea bag and stepped off the porch. Gravel crunched under my boots. The cold air sharpened my thoughts instead of dulling them. Where are you going? My father yelled. Home, I said. You don't have one. Chad sneered. I turned back. Porch light haloing them in shadow. That, I said, is what you think, and for the first time since landing, I felt calm, because they had no idea how much trouble they'd created. No idea what was coming. Fear grows best when you don't explain it. I didn't sleep that night. I checked into a roadside motel, the kind with buzzing neon and an air conditioner that rattled louder than the traffic. I set my sea bag down, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at my phone. My father called 3 times. I turned it face down and let it ring. People love the word family when they need something. They rarely use it when you do. The room smelled like old carpet and lemon cleaner. I showered, but the heaviness stayed. So I sat under the dim lamp and opened the folder I'd carried from Okinawa. Paperwork, screenshots, emails, notes, the evidence that had slowly taken shape while I was overseas. Betrayal doesn't arrive all at once. It starts with cracks, missed calls, half answers. Then one day the dam breaks and you realize every red flag was trying to save you. I remembered the moment it clicked. I was standing on a balcony outside the barracks in Okinawa. The air thick, cicadas screaming. My phone buzzed another automated alert. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the words, property ownership update. Every instinct I'd honed told me to read it. It was brief, clinical. An ownership change had been processed, not completed, not verified. My name was still there, but another had been added. Incomplete, blurry, like someone had started something. They hoped no one would notice. I called my father, voicemail, called again, texted, nothing, tried Chad. Nothing. I stood there staring at the Pacific, warm breeze on my face, my stomach turning cold. Not because I knew what was happening, but because I didn't. The next day, during lunch, I asked a JAG officer if he had 5 minutes. He gave me 10. I told him what I'd seen. He didn't panic. He asked one question: who is your power of attorney? When I said my father's name, something shifted in his expression, recognition. Not judgment, he'd seen this before. And that's when I knew what was waiting for me back home wasn't just heartbreak, it was a reckoning. This before, more times than he liked to admit, he told me stories always vague, never with names about service members who came home to empty garages, drained accounts, sold cars, refinanced homes, even divorce papers signed while they were halfway across the world, families who swore they were helping, families who crossed lines and then acted surprised when consequences followed. Trust is good, he told me. Oversight is better. That sentence stayed with me. I asked him what to do next. He didn't hesitate. He told me exactly which county office to contact, which forms to request, how to word the email so it wouldn't disappear into a bureaucratic black hole. I sent everything that same afternoon. A week later, the file came through. I opened it on my bunk, expecting confusion. A mistake, a clerical error that could be cleared up with a phone call. Instead, I saw signatures, dates, authorizations, and the buyer's name, Benson. The cold that hit me wasn't emotional, it was physical, the kind that settles into your bones and refuses to leave. My father had signed the first authorization 2 days after telling me how peaceful the house felt lately. He signed the second after texting me a heart emoji. And the third the one that pushed the property toward sale on the same day I called him from a field exercise and told him I missed home. Not once did he tell me, and Chad's bank account was listed as one of the destinations for the wired money. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen. The light above my bunk flickered. A fan hummed overhead. Somewhere down the hall, Marines laughed, decompressing after a long day. Life kept moving. I didn't. That night, I called my father again. This time he answered only because I used an office phone he didn't recognize. His voice was cheerful. To cheerful, hey, sweetheart, everything okay over there? Did you sell my house? I asked. The pause told me everything. 5 seconds, 10, long enough for a lifetime to collapse. Before you get upset, I hung up. I didn't trust myself to speak, and over the next few days, every time he called back, I let it ring. I wasn't ready for explanations, or guilt, or justifications dressed up as love. I wasn't ready to hear from a man who hadn't respected me enough to tell me the truth. But something else started forming in that silence, a plan. People think revenge is loud, explosive, dramatic. But real revenge is quiet. It breathes, it waits, it sharpens itself in the dark. When my deployment ended, I told no one. I booked the earliest flight home and landed at SeaTac before sunrise. No calls, no warnings. I rented a car, drove straight to the county recorder's office when they opened, and asked for everything. I spent 2 hours with a clerk who'd seen enough family disasters to recognize one instantly. She didn't say much, but the look in her eyes told me I wasn't imagining things. When I walked out with the full packet, it finally hit me. They'd cornered themselves, legally, completely. That night, in the cheap motel with the buzzing neon sign bleeding through the window, I spread the documents across the bed, every page, every signature, every timestamp. I highlighted, circled, cross-referenced, the betrayal still. God, it hurt, but clarity felt like oxygen. They thought they'd beaten me, thought I'd come home helpless, thought a Marine would crumble over a house. They forgot who raised me. They forgot my mother taught me how to fight quietly. They forgot the cause taught me how to fight smart. And worst of all, they forgot that consequences are patient. The next morning, I drove back to the neighborhood before the sun fully rose. Clung to the lawns, fog hung low, like the world hadn't decided what kind of day it wanted to be yet. I parked a few houses down and let the engine tick into silence. Being that close to a place that had once been my anchor felt strange, like standing outside your own memories, locked out by people who were supposed to protect you. The porch light flicked on. Emily stepped outside in a light jacket, arms wrapped around herself. She looked like she hadn't slept either. I walked toward her slowly so I wouldn't startle her. Morning. I said, morning. She replied softly, I didn't expect to see you. I know. But we have things to sort out. I stayed a few feet away, careful not to invade what she still believed was her space. Did you talk to anyone last night? She nodded. My husband. He's flying back tonight. We're getting a lawyer first thing tomorrow. Then, quieter. I didn't tell your father. Good, I said. Don't. She sank onto the porch step, her mug trembling in her hands. We've been saving for years. This was supposed to be our fresh start. I sat beside her. You didn't do anything wrong. Emily, you trusted the people selling you a house. That's what anyone would do. What do you think will happen now? That depends on how honest everyone is willing to be. I handed her the documents. These are for your lawyer. She looked at them, then at me. This is going to get messy, isn't it? Yes, I said. But messy doesn't mean hopeless. That's when the door opened. My father stepped out, wearing the same tight expression he used when I was a teenager, and he'd already decided I was wrong. Maria, he snapped. What are you doing here? Talking, I said calmly. Not without my permission. Your permission, I repeated. That's interesting, considering none of this belongs to you. It doesn't belong to you either, he shouted. It never belonged to you. I said evenly. Power of attorney isn't ownership, it's responsibility. And you abused it. I did what I had to do, he said. Your brother was in danger. People are always after him, I replied. That doesn't give you the right to steal from me. You always judge him, he barked. You think you're better than him, and I didn't matter. I asked quietly. I served 13 years. I sent money home. I held this family together more times than you'll admit. When did I stop being your child? He hesitated, and in that hesitation, I understood everything. He didn't do it out of hate. He did it out of weakness, out of love twisted into obligation, out of fear of losing one child at the expense of another. But intent doesn't erase damage, and love doesn't excuse betrayal. He'd said it before, more than once, quiet warnings wrapped in half-finished stories, no names, just lessons, stories about service members burned while deployed, about families who smiled on the phone, then sold cars, drained accounts, refinanced homes, emptied storage units, even signed divorce papers for people thousands of miles away. Trust is good, he told me, but oversight is better. Those words stayed with me. They echoed, trust is good, oversight is better. So I asked him what to do next. He didn't hesitate. Request the full transaction logs. He showed me exactly which county office to contact, which forms mattered, how to word the request so it wouldn't disappear into bureaucracy. I sent everything that same afternoon. A week later, the file arrived. I opened it on my bunk, expecting confusion. A mistake, some clerical mix-up that would make sense once I looked closer. But the moment I saw the signatures, the dates, the notes in the margins, the buyer's name Benson, I felt a cold sink into me that never really leaves. My father had signed the first authorization 2 days after telling me how peaceful the house felt lately. The second came after he sent me a heart emoji. The third, the one that pushed the property forward for sale, was signed the same day I called him from a field exercise and told him how much I missed home. He never told me, not once. Not even a hint, and Chad, my brother, his bank account showed up in the logs as a destination for the wired money. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen. The light above my bed flickered. A fan hummed overhead. Marines laughed in the hallway, shaking off another long day. Life kept moving. I didn't. I was frozen in place. Later that night, I called my father again. This time he answered only because he didn't recognize the number. I'd used the office phone. His voice was cheerful, too cheerful. Hey, sweetheart. Everything okay over there? I swallowed hard. Did you sell my house? The silence that followed told me everything. 5 seconds, 10, 15, long enough for an entire world to collapse. Before you get upset, I hung up. I didn't trust myself to speak, and when he called back over the next few days, I let it ring. I wasn't ready for excuses, or reasoning, or guilt dressed up as justification. I wasn't ready to listen to a man who hadn't respected me enough to tell me the truth. But something else was building inside me, quietly, steadily. People think revenge is loud, explosive, dramatic. But real revenge is quiet. It breathes, it waits, it watches, it sharpens itself in the dark. When my deployment ended, I didn't announce it. I booked the earliest flight home and landed at SeaTac before sunrise. I told no one, not Dad, not Chad, not anyone. I rented a car. Went straight to the county recorder's office the moment they opened, requested every document in person, spent 2 hours with a clerk who'd seen enough family disasters to recognize one instantly. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. The sympathy in her eyes told me I wasn't wrong. When I walked out with the full packet, the truth finally settled in. My father and my brother had legally cornered themselves. They just didn't know it yet. That night, in a cheap motel buzzing with neon light, I spread every page across the bed, every signature, every timestamp. I highlighted, circled, cross-referenced. The betrayal still hurt God. It hurt, but clarity has a way of giving you air again. They thought they'd beaten me, thought I'd come home helpless, thought a Marine would crumble over a house. They forgot who raised me. They forgot my mother taught me how to fight quietly. They forgot the cause taught me how to fight smart, and worst of all, they forgot that consequences are patient. The next morning, I drove back to the neighborhood before sunrise. Dew covered the lawns, fog hung low, like the world hadn't decided to wake up yet. I parked a few houses down and let the engine fall silent. Sitting that close to what had once been my sanctuary felt strange. Strangers lived there. Now because the people who should have protected me decided I was expendable. The porch light clicked on. Emily stepped outside, wrapped in a jacket, exhaustion written all over her. She stood there staring at the yard like she didn't recognize it. I walked toward her slowly. When she saw me, I lifted a hand. Morning. I said, morning. She replied softly. I didn't expect to see you. I know, I said. But we need to talk. I stayed a few feet back. Didn't invade the space she still believed was hers. Did you talk to anyone last night? I asked. She nodded. My husband, he's flying back tonight. We're getting a lawyer tomorrow. She hesitated. I didn't tell your father. Good, I said. Don't. She sank onto the porch step, hands shaking around her mug. I don't know how this happened. We saved for years. This was supposed to be our fresh start. Her voice cracked. And for a moment, guilt brushed against me, not because I caused this, but because my father's betrayal had spilled onto someone innocent. You didn't do anything wrong, I told her. You trusted the people selling the house. Anyone would. My father always sounds certain, I added. Even when he's wrong. She wiped her face. What happens now? That depends on how honest everyone wants to be. I handed her the documents. Give these to your lawyer. She looked at them, then at me. This is going to get messy, isn't it? Yes, I said, but messy doesn't mean hopeless. The door opened again. My father stepped out, wearing the same rigid expression he used when scolding me. As a teenager, Maria, what are you doing here? Talking, I said calmly. He pointed like I didn't belong. Not without my permission. Your permission, I repeated. Interesting, considering none of this belongs to you. It doesn't belong to you either, he shouted. It never belonged to you, I said. Power of attorney isn't ownership, it's responsibility. And you abused it. I did what I had to do, he snapped. Your brother was in danger. He's always in danger. I said, that doesn't give you the right to steal from me. It wasn't stealing. I served 13 years. I said quietly, sent money home, held this family together. When did I stop mattering? He hesitated, and in that silence, I saw the truth, not malice, weakness, love twisted into obligation, fear of losing one child at the expense of another. But love doesn't excuse betrayal. Then Chad stepped outside. Rubbing sleep from his eyes, is this still about the house? He muttered, yes, I said, it is, relax. He scoffed, you're not dead, you can rebuild. No, I said, stepping closer, but it might be the end of you. A neighbor stopped his car. Mr. Halpin, retired Navy, he recognized me instantly. I explained, calmly, just facts. That's not good, he said. No, I agreed. Call the sheriff, he suggested. Emily shook her head. We will. And I'll contact the VA legal office, I added. My father's face collapsed. Please, we're family. I know, I said. That's why this hurts. I spent the rest of the morning at the sheriff's office this time. Not as a returning Marine, but as a woman holding proof that her family violated the law while she served overseas. Lieutenant Donahue read the file and sighed. This is serious. I know, once this starts, there's no stopping it. He destroyed my trust. I said, if I let this go, every deployed service member stays vulnerable. He nodded. We'll begin today. By afternoon, the truth was moving. Slowly, officially, this wasn't revenge anymore. It was accountability. And accountability doesn't shout. It works. I didn't sleep much that night either, but I wasn't restless. I was ready. The next morning, I drove back to the house. Emily was already there, standing beside her attorney. The sheriff's deputy arrived soon after, then my father's truck pulled up, Chad riding shotgun. They both looked smaller somehow, diminished. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. Chad stared at the ground like he wished it would open and take him with it. We stood in a loose circle in the yard, no shouting, no theatrics. Just the quiet pressure of truth with nowhere left to hide. Dad cleared his throat. I didn't realize it was illegal, he said. I swear to God I didn't. You didn't want to realize, I replied softly. There's a difference. Chad started to speak, but his lawyer, yes. He'd brought one, rested a firm hand on his shoulder and silenced him. The deputy laid out the next steps. Formal statements, temporary restrictions on Dad and Chad regarding the property, an active investigation, the possibility of charges. The word drained the color from my father's face. He looked at me, eyes glassy. I never meant for it to come to this. I know, I said, but you brought us here. Then I turned away, because there was nothing left to say. For the first time in days, I walked up to the front door and placed my hand against it. The paint was cool, familiar. My throat tightened. I didn't open it, not yet, but I stood there, long enough to feel something return, not safety, not certainty, but something steadier. Truth. When everyone finally left, the deputy, the lawyers, the neighbors pretending not to stare, I stayed behind. The street was quiet in that heavy way neighborhoods get after a storm. Dad and Chad drove off without a word. Emily and her attorney went to file paperwork. I stood alone on the patch of grass I used to mow every Sunday, letting the silence settle around me, unsure whether to wear it or shake it off. Eventually, I opened the door. Slowly, carefully. It felt like stepping into a memory that didn't fully belong to me anymore. The furniture had been rearranged, softer touches, family photos that weren't mine, but beneath it all, the house remembered, the dent in the floor from the toolbox I dropped years ago, the scratch on the doorframe from moving my dresser alone, the faint outline where my medals once hung. Homes change, but they remember. I walked through each room, not to reclaim anything yet, but to remind myself I hadn't lost everything. The process now belonged to the law, to the attorneys, to the county, to the VA, and for the first time, I trusted that system more than I trusted anything my father could promise. The last room I entered was my bedroom. White curtains fluttered in the breeze. Everything looked different except the bones of the space. I ran my hand along the windowsill and felt it, the tiny ridge of my initials. Carved the day I bought the house, I'd forgotten they were there. The letters pressed into my palm like a quiet reminder. I was here, I had built this. I stayed a moment longer, then stepped back outside. My father was waiting at the bottom of the porch. Hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched. A man finally carrying a weight he could no longer pass off. We stood there in silence, the longest one we'd shared in years. "Can we talk?" He asked. "We've been talking." I said, "No." He replied quietly, "Not like this." Something in his voice made me pause. Humility, exhaustion, the sound of a man out of excuses. I nodded once. He looked older. Not with time but with regret. His eyes were red. His voice shook. "I thought I was helping him," he said. "I thought if I didn't step in, he'd lose everything." "You didn't step in," I said. "You stepped over me." He bowed his head. "I know, I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to understand. I was scared." "Of what?" "Losing him," he whispered. "He's always been a mess, but he's all I have left." "And me?" I asked. "I didn't want to lose you either," he said. "But I kept choosing." "Wrong, I didn't soften. Not yet, but I listened." "Your mother was the strong one," he said. "You got that from her. After she died, I didn't know how to hold things together. Chad needed me. Or at least it felt like he did. You were always fine. You always made it. I thought you wouldn't break." "I didn't," I said, "but you broke something in me." His eyes filled. "I know, and you broke something in yourself too," I added. "You just don't see it yet." He covered his face. "I don't know how to fix this." "You can't fix all of it," I said gently. "But you can be honest, and you can let the consequences happen." "I don't want to go to jail." "You may not want to," I said, "but you may have to answer for what you did." He nodded slowly. "If that's what it takes, I'll do it." And for the first time since I came home, I believed him. "I'm proud of you," he said softly. I never say it right, but I am. The words landed late, but they landed. "Take care of yourself," I said, "and take responsibility." He drove off slowly, like the road itself felt heavy. Emily came out a little later. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I think so," I said. "Are you?" "We will be," she replied. "It'll take time." The weeks that followed moved slowly. Papers, meetings, statements. Benson disappeared until the sheriff found him hiding out. Chad met with a public defender. My father gave a 3-hour statement and didn't back out once. Eventually, the sale was voided. Emily and her husband were reimbursed. My house remained mine. Months later, when I finally walked back in as the official owner, I moved through each room carefully. The memories returned, but this time, so did something else. Peace. Not perfect. Not complete, but real. I stood in the living room and whispered, "I'm home." And I wasn't just home, I was whole again.